The Bills-Ravens game lived up to the hype. We have seen another phenomenal playoff game. The Bills narrowly escaped an overtime with the Baltimore Ravens after Mark Andrews dropped a critical two-point conversion. A lot went on in the game, but that undoubtedly will be the point of focus going forward. That will be the talking about, what if Mark Andrews doesn't drop that ball? What if Mark Andrews doesn't fumble? What if? And Mark Andrews does deserve the biggest share of the blame for this game. But Baltimore by no means played some perfect game where they deserved to win if not for the actions of a singular player. Their run defense was pretty bad all night. One of the best run defenses in the NFL all year was flattened at points by James Cook, could not effectively contain Josh Allen, and got ran over in the biggest moments. Lamar Jackson, phenomenal in the second half. The Ravens never punted, but 2 turnovers in the first half led to points, cost his team the game ultimately, and the discourse around him is going to be toxic and biased to a great degree, particularly if he wins the MVP as he is expected to after he was named to the first team All-Pro squad. I can't feel too bad for Lamar anymore. I can't defend him. It's not his fault entirely, but he played poorly, didn't play well enough to win. No one on this Ravens team individually besides Derrick Henry, in my opinion, truly played well enough to win. Maybe Justice Hill, who had those big explosive carries, but even then, in the biggest moments, he was getting bound up. John Harbaugh didn't coach that well of a game. The defensive and offensive coordinators failed to live up to expectations. It was just a bad showing all around from the Baltimore Ravens. Still a very competitive game, still close. Bills played well. We'll talk about them more in a second, but the Ravens, unsurprisingly, are the focus.
To anyone who watched the game, I think it was painfully obvious that the Ravens were the more talented team. They doubled the Bills' total passing yards. They averaged over 2 more yards a carry. They had more rushing yards, but they made back-breaking mistakes in the biggest moments that the Bills took advantage of. The Bills did not have the most spectacular night throwing the ball through the air or even running the ball compared to what the Ravens accomplished on the ground. But when Lamar Jackson threw an interception early, they didn't get points off that one. When he then fumbled, they went down and got a touchdown. When Mark Andrews fumbled, they went down and got a field goal. In the biggest moments, they executed. When the Ravens had an opportunity to tie the game the first time around with a 2-point conversion, Matt Milano made a big play. So in big moments this game, the Bills defense and offense showed up. It was reminiscent of a Chiefs win where they don't particularly play super great, but they don't make the mistakes that cost you the game. And the Ravens, a lot of their key players made big mistakes, and it is the reason they lost.
I think I would not say the Bills played some perfect game. McDermott had a few coaching bumbles down there after the Mark Andrews fumble. Instead of pushing Josh Allen, instead of handing the ball off to Ray Davis, who'd been fairly effective up the middle all night, they decide, hey, let's run this weird out of shotgun play where Josh Allen does like a draw and then runs into a 350-pound, 6-foot nose tackle. There were some questionable play calls that cost the Bills 4 points. They just they just ran up the middle twice. I am reasonably confident they score a touchdown. This game isn't close. The Ravens don't have the opportunity to go down there, score an 8-point touchdown, and tie it up. So I wouldn't say the Bills played perfect. McDermott's telling some areas of weakness. Josh Allen still missed his players. Guys still had drops, but in weather like this, I don't think you can necessarily blame the Bills or the Ravens players who had drops for not being able to hold on to the ball. It's a winter game outside in Buffalo. There are going to be mistakes like that.
You spoke to it already, and a lot of people are going to want to blame Lamar Jackson for the loss because of his turnovers. We have seen on Twitter and on various social media platforms just how angry people are at Mark Andrews for dropping the 2-point conversion and fumbling earlier in the game before that even happened, and they're saying these 2 players are the reason the Ravens lost. These individual players, more specifically Lamar Jackson, played good enough to win this game. I mean, we saw what he accomplished on the last drive of the game, scrambling around, making big throws down the field just to lead the drive that gives them the ability to tie the game. We saw him make big throws earlier in the game that led to scoring drives. But because of the Mark Andrews mistakes, combined with his own mistakes, that is why they lost. If you just have Lamar Jackson's turnovers in a vacuum and the Mark Andrews mistakes never happen, the Ravens win, and vice versa. If the Mark Andrews mistakes happen and Lamar Jackson's turnovers earlier in the game don't happen, the Ravens still win. So it is a combination of everything that went wrong on the Ravens offense, the big mistakes combined, that is the reason they lost, not just Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and whatever else you want to point to.
Now, point to Mark Andrews here. He also had a big 19-yard reception on that, what would have been that game-tying drive. Without that, the Ravens probably stall out, do not get down there and score the touchdown with Isaiah Likely. So if you want to take away the Mark Andrews mistakes, fine. he was still a big factor on why this game was that close from a positive perspective. Still had a fairly effective night receiving outside those two mistakes. Let's look at Lamar Jackson here for a little bit, then we can talk about the Bills and their upcoming matchup.
That is speaking exactly to my point, because these players made big plays, and if you just remove some of their mistakes, they win the game. But all of the mistakes combined is the reason they lost.
But anyway, let's talk about Lamar Jackson for a second. You're doing a little bit of deflection, a little of, oh, well, he played well enough to win, yada, yada, yada. I'm kind of tired of it at this point. Lamar Jackson is going to win his third straight MVP this offseason, or, well, I guess it's his offseason now. Do you know the number of players who have won 3 MVPs before winning the Super Bowl? It's 0. Do you know the number of players who have 3 MVPs without even making a Super Bowl? It's still 0 outside of Lamar Jackson. Do you know the number of players with 3 MVPs with more turnovers in the playoffs than they have passing touchdowns?
0, I'm guessing?
It's Lamar Jackson, it's Johnny Unitas who played in the 60s, and it's Jim Brown who was a running back and doesn't have passing touchdowns. So it's really Johnny Unitas, a quarterback from a long ago era, and Lamar Jackson. No quarterback in the NFL outside of Patrick Mahomes at this point, if you want to include Aaron Rodgers in this, fine, should have higher expectations game in and game out than Lamar Jackson. He's been given these awards, he's been given all sorts of accolades, and you say the regular season, whatever, at some point they have to matter. Your regular season success has to translate into the playoffs at some point. The bar has been set incredibly high by Patrick Mahomes, but that bar should be about 1 notch lower for Lamar because he has not won the Super Bowl. He needs to be playing at a high top tier level. You can't just play well enough to say maybe we should have won this game if not for 1 or 2 mistakes. You have to be the deciding factor in these games. You get a pass if you're a guy like Patrick Mahomes who is playing winning football, who's not jeopardizing his team's chances of winning and doesn't have a great box score in the playoffs like he did against the Texans. You get a pass for that because of your resume, because of your success, because you're winning games. When you keep having the worst game of the season last, at some point you just have to be heavily criticized. Lamar's going to get a lot of heat this offseason. As time goes on, the context of the Andrews drops is going to fade, and I kind of think he deserves it this time around. I am not going to defend Lamar at any point this offseason. He deserves everything he gets at this point.
Well, what does that criticism mean? They're going to move off of him for a different quarterback? They're going to bench him for a backup quarterback come playoff time?
He is a playoff choker, and he probably doesn't deserve to keep winning these MVP awards if he's not going to execute in the playoffs. You can say it's a regular season award. At some point, hey, it's got to matter. You're not the most valuable player to your team.
He doubled Josh Allen's pass yards. He led a potential game. Do you think he played
better than Josh Allen? I don't.
There's an argument that the good he showed was better than the good that Josh Allen showed. Josh Allen just didn't make the couple mistakes. To my point that I brought up earlier, if you just have both of Lamar Jackson's turnovers and you don't have the Mark Andrews drop 2-point conversion or the Mark Andrews fumble, the Ravens win the game. He individually played good enough to win if the rest of his offense didn't make...
It's quite the combination. You can't play poorly enough to lose these games and play good enough to... Well, you can, I guess, but you can't have me not light you up over it. And he's going to get lit up by not just me, not just the jabronis with cameras in their faces. Everyone is going to call Lamar a playoff choker, and he has done nothing to defend himself and has done nothing to deserve these continued accolades and regular season awards, which affect someone's legacy. Lamar Jackson's not better than Josh Allen. He's not better than Patrick Mahomes, but is going to have more MVPs than both those two guys combined after this year. At some point, the expectation has to be for him to elevate his game in the playoffs and not regress. Would you argue this was not the worst game of his season?
The Steelers' loss, he did not have nearly as high a highs in that game as they did in this one.
The highs weren't that high in this game either. He was throwing to wide open receivers. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely had a ton of separation on their big plays. And maybe you say it's a case in the Steelers game, but you more directly point to Justin Tucker being the reason they lost that one instead of Lamar. This one, it's pretty heavily on Lamar. It's about, I'd say 40 Andrews, 30 Lamar, the rest on coaching, and a few other people.
It's a team offensive loss, in my opinion.
Well, start giving the MVP awards to the best teams in football then. Oh, wait, we did that last year. That's why Lamar got it with worse stats than Dak, but we're not doing it this year.
Can we talk about the Bills a little bit? Or
you want to talk about the Bills. Josh Allen's good at football.
You talked about the Bills
already.
The Bills did a great job. You spoke to it a little bit already at limiting the Ravens' ability to run the ball. Yes, the Ravens ran for 176 yards on the ground, but 68 of those yards came on the drive late in the game where the Ravens just rammed it down the Bills' throat, had a couple big plays from Justice Hill, Derrick Henry, and they got the ball into the end zone immediately. You take away that one drive, and the Ravens are averaging under 5 yards a carry. They only total a little over 100 yards on the game between the rest of the drives, which just shows the Bills' run defense was very effective, especially in the first half. So the fact they were able to limit Derrick Henry at points during the game and contain it only to a couple specific drives, I think is a big reason they were able to stop the Ravens from putting up 40 points on them on the defensive side of the ball. And then on the offensive side of the ball, just what they were able to do from a rushing perspective. Number one run defense during the regular season, and they did not exactly blow you away with their yards per carry, but running for 146 yards on the ground, breaking big runs when you needed big runs to happen. And the only time they were really stopped on the ground was late in the game when they decided to go with shotgun quarterback power from 2.5 yards out to try and get the touchdown.
Earning McDermott that terrorist title. Yeah, the deceptive part of this is the yards per carry is drastically in the favor of the Ravens instead of those long 10, 15, maybe even further runs. The Bills had fewer negative rushes than Baltimore. They did not get stuffed. They kept the chains moving. That 4.1 yards a carry felt like 4.1 yards a carry. Every single time someone in Buffalo's backfield got the ball and ran with it, they were getting a few yards. They were going to get some production. They were going to make it an easier second down, an easier third down, and just give Josh Allen, give whatever skill player was getting the ball, give the offensive line the ability to step up and make a play to keep the drives going, which is why those drives didn't stall. The Ravens, they had a lot more tackles for loss. They were not as effective in terms of keeping things going. The turnovers obviously is what ended these drives. They had 3 touchdowns, 3 turnovers, and kneeled it down at the end of the half. Some of those drives which ended in turnovers would have stalled out if not for the interception or the fumble. The Bills did a good job stopping the run against the best rushing team in the NFL, in my opinion. Next week against the Chiefs, who are leaning heavily upon their rushing attack to get their offense any sort of production outside of Travis Kelce, I feel like they're probably going to be able to do that again. They match up very well if they're playing this style of football with the Kansas City Chiefs. The one issue is going to be they can't cover tight ends, likely, and Andrews had, 130, 140 total yards, 1 touchdown, should have been a 2-point conversion. Should have probably been more if Andrews
should have been 2 2-point conversions.
Look, that's second. I push back on the 2 2-point conversions. The first one was horrible play calling from John Harbaugh. If you've just pounded this team relentlessly for an entire drive for 8 straight plays, why the hell are you passing the ball on the 2-yard line? Hand it to Derrick Henry again. Make them stop you, which they have failed utterly to do the entirety of that drive. That was bad play calling, but that's getting me off topic again. If they can play this way defensively and just accept the Travis Kelce factor, I think their offense is going to be able to outscore and outcompete the Chiefs, particularly if they are banged up like they seem to be against the Texans. This is going to be the best shot Josh Allen will have to upset and defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm curious what the point spread of this game is going to look like, because anyone who's been watching knows the Bills are the better team, the more talented offensive team than the Chiefs, but it's at Arrowhead and it's the Chiefs in the playoffs, so I feel like it's going to be 1.5 points.
Well, the Bills in this game versus the Ravens were just a more technically sound football team, and I said it at the beginning of this video. It felt a little bit like a Chiefs win, where in the biggest moments, they made the right decisions, the right calls, with the exception of the quarterback power late in the game. You can't really point to a coaching error in this one, and it gives you confidence heading into a Chiefs game where consistently in the playoffs, it has been Andy Reid who's been out-coaching you in the biggest moments. So I think if you're a Bills fan, the way this game was coached and the way they ran the ball gives you confidence that you can maybe beat the Chiefs, but it is Arrowhead Stadium.
They've got the officials. They've got the devil magic. The children are in chains under the stadium.
I do not co-sign the referee's
Big
statement.
Red is eating his children-flavored cheeseburgers. It's going to be a rough go. I think the Chiefs that's a 1.5 point line. That could be over or whatever. Going to be a good game one way or the other in the AFC.
That has been our reaction to the Bills and Ravens game. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Use code Thicc on Underdog, and we'll see you in the next one.